Well, Van Jones, he's become both an inspirational and a divisive figure. This is the first former Obama administration official to release a book. He's giving us an inside look into how Washington and the White House think and where they go all wrong on understanding the rest of us, the so-called 99%. Now, with his newly formed organization, Rebuild the Dream, Jones is focusing on community building, specific campaigns like addressing student debt, finding the right candidates. But Jones hasn't been vilified just by the right wing, with the former communist labels and attacks that forced him out of his job in Washington. No, by supporting and speaking up for the Occupy movement, there also have been a lot of calls that he's just trying to co-opt the popular movement and fit it into the mold of the Democratic Party, into the very political system that they see as dysfunctional. So how exactly does one rebuild the dream and get everybody on the same page? Well, joining me from our studio in New York is former White House Special Advisor Van Jones. He's also author of the new book, Rebuild the Dream. Van, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And where should we start? How about we start with the economy and with these new jobs figures that are coming out for the month of March? Well, the last couple of months were actually looking pretty good for the president. Now we're seeing that this economy is on very, very shaky ground. Specifically, the recovery is on very shaky ground. And so how exactly do you go about trying to rebuild the dream if people can't even get to what's probably one of the first steps, which is finding a job, because people are still giving up and they're not looking for jobs anymore. They're stepping out of the market.
Well, sure. I mean, before you get a job, you often try to get educated. And education is also a big barrier now because of the incredible student loan crisis that we're in. We now have $1 trillion of student debt in the country, tuition debt in the country. That's more than all the credit card debt in America. If you took every credit card in America, stacked it up, that pile of debt would be a smaller pile than just the debt this next generation has racked up trying to go to school. So if you think about that, plus the jobless crisis, plus the mortgage crisis, where more than 25% of our homes are underwater. In other words, American families are paying more for those houses than they're worth because they were initially evaluated during some kind of Fantasyland period of a bubble. You've got major, major devastation for America's middle class. The jobs numbers may be a little better this month, a little better next month, a little better last month. The jobs numbers might be getting better, but the jobs themselves are getting worse because these are not well-paid jobs. Often we're talking about service sector jobs. You are also right to talk about the discouragement that people feel, both our older workers who have so much to offer, who have sometimes just chosen to call themselves early retirees, but they've really been pushed out of the job market. And then our younger workers have not been able to transition in. So this economy is in very bad shape. And the inability of America's government to step forward and do the things that need to be done in terms of being able to pass laws that would focus on infrastructure, on education, protecting our safety net, and asking those who have done well in America to do well by America and pay their taxes and pay them fully and pay them without complaint has been blocked. The ability of America's government to do that has been blocked both by big corporate money and by right-wing extremists. Some of them are in Congress. So we got a big fight. I wrote this book, Rebuild the Dream, because I felt, as somebody who had been a grassroots outsider and then become a White House insider and then became a grassroots outsider again, I had a 360-degree view of some of the dysfunction and misfires, both from the grassroots and from the White House, and I thought I had an obligation to put that in writing, put that out there for everybody to look at. That's what the book Rebuild the Dream is all about.
All right, well, I want to get into some more of these specifics, especially what you call some of the right-wing extremism. But first, let me ask you one more thing, too. You said that the traditional pathway to get out of poverty, if you look at it, right, some of the steps there were going to college and getting a home. You said that those are no longer steps, quite the opposite, they've become traps. And so, I mean, do we even want to talk about rebuilding the American dream, or do we need to have an entire evaluation of exactly what that is and how it is that we need to get there and go about things differently? Do people still need to go to college? Do they need to give up on the idea of owning a home?
Well, I'm not willing to throw away the best parts of the American dream. You know, there's some parts of the American dream that just, frankly, the American fantasy. You know, everybody's going to be rich. Everybody's going to be able to live in the suburbs and have a big McMansion and, you know, buy flat screen TVs to cover up the holes in their lives and just live happily. That was the American fantasy that was sold to us by the commercializers and the consumerists. That is gone, and it needs to be gone. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, there's some good things, not the least of which is the idea that anybody in this country should be able to work hard and get somewhere. You shouldn't have to be born rich. You shouldn't have to be born with a famous last name to be able to apply yourself and give your kids a better life. That version of the American dream is precious. It's brought people here from all around the world. I'm African American. My family didn't choose to come here hundreds of years ago, but we have chosen to stay because we want to make good on that promise. We should not let that be thrown in the garbage can because the richest people ever born don't want to pay their taxes, which is basically what's going on. The country is bankrupt not because we helped grandma too much with Medicare or because we helped the kids too much with scholarships. It's bankrupt because of the Bush tax cuts and because of Bush's wars. And so we have a responsibility to at least make sure that some of the basic ideas of the American dream are held intact. Now, to the point of you know, college, home ownership, some of these other indicators, it could be the case that we will have to find more creative ways to meet some of our basic needs. But we should be doing that, not the 1% getting everything, the 99% getting nothing, the 1% rising, the 99% falling. That's wrong. 100% of us need to share in the pain, and 100% of us need to share in the gain. That makes us one country. There seems to be a political party, at least one in the country, that thinks that is wrong-headed, does not want us to be a nation of neighbors where we look out for each other, and is happy with the top tip of the 1% getting all the gains of the country and giving us all their pain. I disagree. That's why I wrote the book.
All right, so I mean, let's talk about, right, you keep using these numbers, the 99%, the 1%, the 100%. I'm curious as to what you think of the Occupy movement as a whole. I know that you were supportive of the movement, right? You want to say that you spoke out for the movement. You don't call yourself a representative, but then there was a lot of people who were very sensitive to that, right, who felt like maybe you were trying to co-opt it. But the Occupy movement, as it is, not being part of the democratic process or the political system that we have and falling into one party or the other, do you think that it's viable?
Of course I do. I think the Occupy, listen, I was the first national so-called Democrat to come out. I went on Bill Maher's show. I wrote on Huffington Post when frankly, many people on the left who now sing Occupy's praises were standing back from it and laughing at it and saying they didn't have good messaging and were critiquing the way that they looked. I was one of the first people to come out and say this is one of the most important developments, and I wrote a piece. I said, get off the fence. Every listserv was critical. This is before it really blew up in October. In September, every listserv on the left was criticizing them, making fun of them. They don't have good messaging. And I wrote a piece in Huffington Post saying, get off the fence. You have young people down there. They went to the scene of the crime against their future. They are standing up. Let's stand with them. So then, you know, I thought they wanted support, and most of them do. Some have said, well, the labor unions and MoveOn.org and Van Jones and anybody else trying to co-op. That's, in fact, impossible. There's only one force in American politics that can never be co-opted, and that's Occupy. I mean, how could you co-opt it? You got to go down there and give them all lobotomies at the General Assembly? I mean, they're designed to not be co-opted, and they have a role, and the role they've chosen for themselves, which I respect, is to push the issues, to do their own experimentation with direct democracy and come up with their own ideas. That's great. They remind me of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, that also occupied the lunch counters. They occupied the buses for the Freedom Rides. They helped people occupy the ballot boxes in Mississippi. They were young. They were idealistic. They pushed ahead. But SNCC was not the entire civil rights movement. There were many, many, many groups in the civil rights movement. Just as the occupiers don't represent the entire 99%. By definition, 99% is a lot of people. And so the rest of us who share the critique and the concern, have a responsibility in our own ways to push forward. Now, I am a Democrat of left.
There has to be more than one group, is what you're saying. I want to just speed it up a little bit because we don't have too much time. Sorry. But, you know, you're speaking about being young, idealistic. You've taken a lot of flack for some of the things that you've done, some of the rallies that you've been to in your past. And, you know, we specifically saw this play a role in why you had to leave the White House and why you had to leave your job. And at that point, it was Glenn Beck that was really leading the charge. But the thing is that, you know, it's not gone. It's still there. Take a listen to something that Dana Lash said just this week.
Coca-Cola decided to side with an admitted Marxist 9/11 truther, cop killer supporter. Yes, the Mumia, that one guy, Mumia Abdul, the guy who Van Jones had cut a song for with his little spaceman studio, I guess. He had organized anti-police marches, Van Jones, for this guy in Philadelphia who shot and killed a cop point blank.
I mean, how do you deal with that? Right? All the time you're being called not only a communist, but a cop killer and a truther. There's a lot of labels.
By who? By who? By people who are extremists themselves, who have very little standing in their own country. I don't worry. Here's the thing. If you spend your whole time worrying about what people say about you, stuff you did when you were in your 20s, early 30s, then you can't look at the future. I'm not ashamed of any of the stuff I did when I was a young person. I was an angry young man. I was looking for answers. I was looking in the face of racism. I was looking in the face of a prison system that was growing like wildfire. I was going to more funerals than I was going to graduations for young people, and I was looking for answers. Some people experiment with drugs and alcohol. I experimented with worldviews, philosophies, and ideologies, and I'm proud to live in a country where, if you live in a free country, you're free to think whatever you want. You're free to read whatever books you want. You're free to explore whatever you want. And you're also free to change your mind. I'm in my 40s now. I'm a father. I'm a homeowner. I'm an employer. My views are different now. I believe that we can use well-regulated markets to clean up the mess that badly regulated and unregulated markets have caused. And that's my stand at this point. But I've never apologized or stood down from any of the stuff I did when I was younger, because you should have the right in this country to be young and to think wild thoughts and to embrace utopian ideas and all that kind of stuff. And I want other people who are young and who are challenging the orthodoxies to feel that you can do that, and you can also move on with your life. The people who criticize me, I've done more to help this country in the past 2 months, fighting to cut mortgages for people who are underwater, fighting to get student loans relief for people. I've done more in the past 2 months to help my country than a lot of these people have done their whole lives, and I don't worry about them.
All right, but then let me read something, and this was a statement that you made, right? I mean, that's part of America, right? We have the freedom of speech. Everyone's supposed to be able to think and say whatever it is that they want, especially from a political perspective. But the other day you were talking about the libertarian ideology. And you said that they've taken this despicable ideology, used it as a wrecking ball, and then you went on to say, they say they're patriots, but they hate everybody in America who looks like us. They say they love America, but they hate the people, the brown folk, the gays, the lesbians, the people with piercings. You know, y'all, you can't be anti-immigrant, bigot, and a patriot. So, you know, I mean, I feel like that's kind of falling into this same attacking line.
Well, hey, listen. I think we have to start punching back and fighting back. Here's the deal: if you can't take it, don't dish it out. Now, that statement I made was overly broad. But is that extremist, right? Because you call these people extremists that go after you for maybe some of your old political views. Well, listen, but that's American politics. You know, I mean, you guys should know that American politics. We mix it up. I've never backed down from a fight over ideas. I'm tired, and I think a lot of people on the American left are tired of a certain section of people acting like they have a monopoly on patriotism. They don't. And they're the ones who challenge our patriotism. And so now I'm saying, okay, well, you know, you can play that game if you want to. Here's what I say about it. That statement was overly broad, and then I said the so-called libertarians. I should have said the so-called libertarians who identified themselves with this sort of ultra right-wing camp, because there are libertarians that don't have those views. So that was an overly broad statement. But I've met libertarians who say that Dr. Martin Luther King, Dr. King, is somebody they can't support, because someone should have the right to exclude people in this country from being able to go into a restaurant or go into a hotel or go into a place of business solely based on the color of their skin. You can't call yourself a patriot and adopt an extreme ideology that would spit in the face of Dr. King. And I will challenge anybody that this country is not